I walked into my parents' house on Christmas Eve expecting the familiar noise of family chatter, but the room went strangely quiet when I set my overnight bag down. Bethany was at the dining table, waving around a catalog filled with glossy photos of kitchen islands and custom cabinets. Cole nodded beside her, already calculating whatever he needed to say to get his way. "We really think the remodel should happen by spring," Bethany announced. "About $22,000 total. It will raise the home value." I smiled politely and took my seat, trying to settle into the rhythm everyone else seemed to have mastered. When the conversation dipped, I mentioned, very gently, "I'm looking at a new apartment in Madison. I might put down a deposit next week. It's $900, and I was considering asking if you could help a little." Bethany's fork clattered onto her plate. Mom turned toward me, her eyes sharpened, colder than the winter air outside. "Callie," she said, "your sister's family will always come first. You will always come second." Dad nodded, as if this were an unspoken rule I should have memorized years ago. "That is just how things work, sweetheart." I felt something in me tilt, like a picture frame knocked off center. This story is an original creation by the writing team of the Revenge Amber channel, inspired by the hidden corners of family life and told with the purpose of fostering emotional connection and spreading understanding. The words kept echoing always second. I stared at the mashed potatoes on my plate, trying to remember how to breathe. Bethany lifted her napkin delicately. "Mom and Dad are just being honest. You're single. You do not have the responsibilities I have." I swallowed. I was only asking for a little help, not, "You should be more self-reliant by now." Mom cut in. "Bethany has children, a household, real priorities." I looked at Dad, hoping for some sign he disagreed, but he simply pushed his glasses up his nose and murmured, "It is Christmas. Let us keep the peace." Bethany let out a small laugh. "See, Callie, you cannot expect Mom and Dad to rearrange their lives for you, not when we actually need the support." The shift was subtle but complete. The table, the house, the entire holiday had rearranged itself around her, leaving me on the outside where I had always been without realizing it. I set my fork down slowly. "All right," I whispered, though nothing inside me felt all right. If you have ever felt that moment when a family truth snaps into place, when you hear something that cannot be unheard, I hope you stay with me. These stories we tell together can help us understand ourselves a little more. And if any part of mine resonates, I would love for you to keep listening. Share it with someone who might need it, and continue this journey with the Revenge Amber community. I excused myself from the table before my voice betrayed me. The moment I stepped into the hallway, the warmth of the dining room faded, replaced by a silence that pressed against my ribs. The walls were lined with frames, Bethany at every age, Bethany at every milestone, Bethany smiling with the ease of someone who was always chosen. I counted them without meaning to. One, then another, then another. I finally found the first photo of me tucked behind a larger frame, its corner slightly bent. I whispered to myself, "Of course." Dad's footsteps sounded behind me. "Callie, do not take what your mother said too personally." I kept my eyes on the photos. "She said I will always be second." "Dad, that was personal." He rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "Your sister has children, a husband, real responsibilities." "I have responsibilities too," I said quietly. Dad hesitated. "Not the same kind." There it was again, that invisible line in the sand I was never allowed to cross. Mom's voice drifted down the hall. "Frank, let her cool off. She always gets emotional when she feels left out." I turned, my throat tightening. I do not feel left out. I feel dismissed. Bethany appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Callie, it is Christmas. Can you not make this about you?" The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because deep down I knew she believed them, When I asked for help with college, I said, "You told me money was tight. 6 months later, you got a down payment for your house." Bethany frowned as if trying to recall something trivial. "Mom and Dad helped because we were starting a family. You were figuring yourself out." "You mean I did not have value yet?" I said. Her expression sharpened. "Do not twist things. You got through school just fine. Because I worked 3 jobs, I shot back. Because I had no one else." Dad stepped between us. "Enough. This is not the time." But the truth was already out, spilling through the seams that had been straining for years. I looked again at the wall of photos, Bethany laughing, Bethany posing, Bethany glowing beneath every spotlight she never had to earn. The absence of me was louder than the presence of her. Something shifted inside me, quiet but irreversible. I walked back toward the dining room, not to rejoin them, but to gather my coat. For the first time, I understood exactly what leaving would mean. When I moved to Madison 18 months earlier, no one in my family asked why. Mom only said, "You will be back once you get lonely." And Dad nodded as if it were a certainty. Bethany did not respond at all, but distance gave me something I never had growing up room to become a person. I worked long hours for a tech company based in Austin, and my manager saw something in me my family never did. Promotion after promotion, small but steady, built into a career that finally felt like mine. I saved every extra dollar, poured money into index funds and a retirement account, and watched it grow. By the time winter came again, I had over $30,000 in savings, nearly $90,000 invested, and stock options that could easily turn into $250,000 if the company kept climbing. None of them knew. None of them asked. The first person who ever asked was Evan. I met him at a cafe near my building after he apologized for accidentally spilling coffee on my shoes. He made me laugh, something I had not done freely in years. One night, sitting across from him in his small living room, he said, "You talk about your job like it matters to you. But the moment your family comes up, your entire voice changes." I looked down at my hands. They do not really see me. They see the version of me that keeps things peaceful. "You do not owe them silence," he said gently. Not anymore. It was the first time anyone had said I did not owe my family something. When I started therapy with Dr. Hannah Whitfield, she listened closely, interrupting only to take notes. After I explained the Christmas Eve blow-up, she leaned forward and said, "Callie, you were not just overlooked. You were assigned a role." What role, I asked. The dependable one. The invisible one. The one who absorbs disappointment so others do not have to. Her words landed like truth I had been circling for years. Evan noticed the change in me before I did. "You walk differently now," he said one evening. "Like you remember you matter." I smiled because, for the first time, it felt true. And when my phone rang late one Sunday night, Bethany's name glowing on the screen, I felt the shift inside me again, quiet, but steady. I knew whatever she said next would pull me back into a family that had never made space for who I was becoming. I almost let the phone ring out. It was late, well past 10, and I had just settled onto the couch with Evan, but Bethany never called me unless she needed something, and something in her timing made my stomach tighten. When I answered, all I heard was shaking breath. "Callie," she whispered, "I need you." Those words had never come from her mouth before, not once. "What happened?" I asked, a choked sound, half sob, half disbelief. Everything is falling apart." I stood and walked toward the kitchen, Evan watching me with quiet concern. "Beth, slow down. Tell me what's going on." She tried, but her voice kept breaking. "Cole, they opened an investigation. He is being accused of falsifying income documents for home buyers. They said he submitted applications with fake numbers. They have been building a case for almost 10 months without telling us. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. Is he being charged? They suspended his license. They searched his office. Her sobs grew sharper. They found things. Callie, paperwork, emails, things that looked terrible. My mind raced, but she kept going as if she could not stop the unraveling. And the debt, she whispered. We have $27,800 on credit cards. I thought we would catch up once Cole closed more deals. But then his checks stopped coming. My breath caught. Beth, why did you not tell anyone Mom said we should not worry you? She cried. She said you always panic, and she did not want the drama. I closed my eyes. Even in disaster, they chose what I should or should not know. What about the mortgage, I asked. We are 5 months behind, she said. The bank gave us 60 days before they start foreclosure. My grip tightened on the counter. Beth, and my car, she sobbed. They repossessed it in the Hy-Vee parking lot. The kids were inside. I had to call a neighbor because I could not get them home. I heard her break, then really break. Mom and Dad said you are the only one who can fix this, she whispered. They said you always figure things out. There it was, the role they carved for me before I was old enough to choose it. Callie, she begged, please, if you do not help, we could lose everything. I felt Evan's hand slip into mine. His thumb brushed my knuckles, steadying me. Beth, I said softly, I need time to understand all of this. Her voice tightened with urgency. We do not have time. Please, just come home tomorrow. Mom is already putting together a plan. A plan. Without me. Of course. I will come, I said finally. But I am not promising anything. A silence, then a relieved gasp. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Callie, when I hung up, Evan stepped closer. What are you walking back into? I looked at the dark screen of my phone, feeling the old weight settle on my shoulders and something new rising underneath it. A storm, I said quietly. But I am not the same person who left that house. Evan nodded. Then they are not ready for you. When I arrived at my parents' house the next afternoon, the tension in the living room hit me before anyone spoke. Papers covered the coffee table bank statements, late notices, a foreclosure warning printed in bold letters. Mom, Dad, Bethany, and Cole all looked up at me with the same expression expectation wrapped in desperation. Mom stood first. Callie, thank goodness. We have been waiting. I glanced at the spread of documents. What is all this? Dad gestured to the papers like he was presenting a business strategy. We have taken the time to calculate everything. There is a way out of this, but we will need you to take the final step. Bethany's eyes were red and swollen. Cole kept staring at the carpet, jaw tight. Mom clasped her hands. Your father and I can withdraw $18,000 from our retirement account. Bethany and Cole will sell some valuables and come up with $6,500. That leaves a remaining balance of around $30,000. You would cover that. I blinked. You already decided that? Of course, Mom said gently, as if explaining something obvious. You are the financially stable one. Dad nodded. It is time for you to step up for the family. I let out a slow breath. And what happens after that? Bethany spoke quickly, as if afraid I would interrupt. We would need you to co-sign our next lease. Our credit score is, well, not usable right now. Cole finally lifted his head. And because of the legal fees, we need someone to help manage bills for a while. Your mom thought you could move back in temporarily. Move back in, co-sign, pay $30,000, manage their crisis. It was not a plan. It was a command. I did not agree to this. I said. Mom's expression hardened. Callie, this is not optional. Bethany and the children are in crisis. We take care of family. Do we? I asked quietly. Dad frowned. Do not start that again. but something inside me snapped at the ease with which they assigned me responsibility for messes I never created. Bethany leaned forward. "If you do not help us, we could lose the house. The kids could have to switch schools. Cole could." I raised a hand. "I understand the stakes, but you cannot decide my role without asking me." Mom's voice softened into a tone I recognized too well gentle manipulation. "Sweetheart, you have always been the level-headed one, the dependable one." That word dependable landed like a weight on my chest. Dad folded his arms. "We need an answer today." The room closed in on me, every face waiting, every expectation tightening like a rope. I stood slowly. "I need 24 hours. Relief washed over their faces, as if I had already said yes. Mom exhaled. "Thank you, Callie. I knew you would do the right thing." But as I walked out the door, something inside me shifted. They thought I was coming back to save them. They had no idea what I was bringing with me. When Evan and I walked into my parents' living room the next evening, the scene was exactly the same: papers covering every inch of the coffee table, my family waiting as if I were a doctor arriving with life-saving news. Bethany even smiled, tentative but hopeful. They thought my 24 hours were for arranging money. They had no idea I spent that time preparing the truth. Mom stood. "Callie, good. We can start discussing the payment order. The mortgage is priority, then the credit cards." "Mom," I said calmly, "sit down." The tone made everyone freeze. Evan stayed beside me, silent but steady. Dad cleared his throat. "We assume you looked at your accounts and figured out a way to cover the $30,000. Once that is handled, I opened the folder in my hands and placed the first set of papers in front of them. "Before we talk about what I can do, you should know what I actually have." Bethany leaned forward. "Callie, we do not need your financial details. We just need you do." I said, "Because you built a plan based on assumptions that were never true." I pointed to the first page. "My checking account has $12,000. My savings have over $30,000. My investment accounts hold nearly $90,000. My retirement fund has over $25,000. And these I slid over another document are my stock options. If the company hits its next valuation, these could be worth $250,000. Mom's eyes widened. Dad blinked hard. Bethany's mouth fell open. "You had all this," Mom whispered. "You never asked." I replied. Dad straightened. "We assumed you were still getting on your feet." "I have been on my feet for years," I said. "You just never looked down long enough to notice." Bethany's shock shifted into accusation. "You watched us struggle while you sat on all that money. I built stability because I had no safety net." I said, "None of you ever asked what I needed while I was working 3 jobs to survive." Cole slammed his hand on his knee. "So you think you are better than us now?" Evan stepped forward. "She never said that." Cole glared at him. "This is family business." I met Cole's stare. "Then, listen carefully. I am not responsible for the choices that led you here." Dad's voice sharpened. "Callie, stop. We are trying to solve a crisis." "No," I said. "You are trying to hand me responsibility for a crisis I did not create." Mom leaned in. "Sweetheart, you have always been the dependable one. That is not a compliment." I interrupted. "That is a role you forced on me." Bethany's voice cracked. "We thought you would want to help." "I do want to help," I said, "but not like this." I pulled out the final document, my terms. The air changed instantly. "These are the conditions for any support I give," I said. "They are non-negotiable." Mom frowned. "Conditions for helping your own sister." "Yes," I said, "because unconditional help is what got our family here." Dad's jaw tightened. "What are you proposing?" "A reset," I said. "For all of us." Silence fell, heavy and unfamiliar. I placed the paper on the table. "I will not give you money to rebuild the same system that broke me. If you want help, then the system changes." Cole scoffed under his breath, but Bethany swallowed hard, fear flickering across her face. Mom whispered, "Callie, what happens if we cannot accept these?" I held her gaze. "Then you find another way out, because I will not sacrifice myself to keep the old patterns alive." The room did not move. No one breathed. For the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me. No one moved when I placed the sheet of paper on the table. Bethany stared at it as if it were a court summons. Mom looked betrayed. Dad looked irritated that the solution he expected was suddenly out of reach. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "All right. Callie, what are these terms?" I kept my voice steady. "The only way I provide support is if the entire family commits to changing how we operate. That starts with 6 months of family therapy with Dr. Hannah Whitfield." Mom's jaw tightened. "Therapy for all of us." "Yes," I said, "because this is not only about money. This is about how we treat each other." Bethany whispered, "We are already drowning. Now you want us to sit in a room and talk about feelings." "You want $20,000 from me," I replied. "This is the cost of rebuilding." Cole scoffed. "You are acting like we are the problem." I turned to him. "You committed fraud that could cost your family everything. You are part of the problem." Mom raised a trembling hand. "Enough, Callie. We do not talk to family that way." "We do now," I said quietly. Dad exhaled sharply. "What else second?" I continued. "Fair treatment going forward. No more automatic prioritizing Bethany's needs over mine." Bethany flinched. "So you want us to worship you now?" "No," I said. "Just to acknowledge I exist." Evan placed a hand on my back, grounding me. "Third," I said, "you and Cole must complete a certified financial literacy program within 90 days. Cole muttered, "This is ridiculous." "It is reality," I replied. Mom opened her mouth, but I kept going. "Fourth, you and Dad must acknowledge the favoritism privately to me, and eventually with the extended family." Dad looked personally offended. "You want us to admit we failed as parents. I want honesty." I said, "For once." Bethany swallowed. "And the money I will loan $20,000. I said, "After 90 days of consistent progress, and only if the old patterns do not return." A long silence followed. Mom wiped her eyes. "What if we cannot meet all of this?" I met her gaze evenly. "Then you handle the crisis without me." Bethany's face crumpled. "Callie, please." For the first time, her plea was not entitlement. It was fear. Dad looked at the paper again, then at me. "We need time to think." His voice shook just enough for me to hear something new in it. Accountability. The first family therapy session felt like stepping into a room full of untended wounds. Dr. Hannah Whitfield greeted us with that calm steadiness she carried so well, but even she seemed to sense the heaviness we brought with us. She invited us to sit. No one wanted the seat next to anyone else. Dr. Whitfield folded her hands. "We are here to understand the patterns that led to this crisis. Callie, since you initiated the terms, would you like to begin?" Mom cut in before I could speak. "I still do not understand why we are doing this. Our family has always been close." I met her eyes. "Close is not the same as healthy." Bethany exhaled sharply. "So now we were unhealthy? Is that what you think of us?" "I think," I said carefully, "that I grew up believing my needs did not matter." Dad frowned. "We treated both of you the same." "That is simply not true," I said. "You may not have meant to, but every choice said otherwise." Dr. Whitfield turned to Bethany. "How do you feel hearing that?" Bethany hesitated. I guess I always thought Callie did not need as much. She was strong, independent." I swallowed. "I learned to be strong because no one noticed when I was not." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I made mistakes, but I never asked to be dragged into emotional history. You joined it the moment you expected me to clean up your crisis. I said, Dr. Whitfield nodded. Cole, your role matters too. Financial collapse does not happen in isolation. Mom's voice broke. We never meant to hurt you. Callie, we wanted Bethany to feel supported. Dad rubbed his forehead. Maybe we leaned too far without realizing. It was the closest thing to an admission I had ever heard. Week after week, truth peeled back layers none of us expected. Some sessions left us silent. Others left us raw and shaking. But slowly, patterns shifted. Mom started listening instead of defending. Dad stopped dismissing and started questioning his own habits. Bethany apologized without excuses. Cole, begrudgingly at first, completed his financial literacy course and brought worksheets to sessions. One evening after therapy, as we were leaving Dr. Whitfield's office, Bethany caught up to me in the hallway. Callie, she said quietly, I know it is not enough, but thank you for not walking away. Her voice carried something I had never heard from her before, not entitlement, humility, and for the first time, I believed real change might be possible. 1 year later, my family stepped into my townhome in Madison for Christmas, their voices quieter, their movements gentler, as if none of us wanted to break whatever we had managed to rebuild. Bethany stood near the entryway, looking at the framed photos on the wall, me at my graduation, me on a hiking trail, me and Evan laughing on a rainy day, no longer hidden behind her own milestones. She touched one frame lightly. You look happy here. I am, I said, and I want you all to be part of it. Mom placed a casserole on the counter, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you for hosting. Sweetheart, it means more than you know. Dad joined us with a slow nod. It feels good to see you standing in a place that is yours. We gathered around the table, and for the first time, no one rushed to fill the silence. It felt comfortable, earned. I raised my glass. New tradition. I said, we each share something we learned this year. Bethany went first. I learned that leaning on people is not the same as expecting them to fix everything. I am trying to stand on my own now. Mom's voice cracked. I learned that love cannot be measured by how much we give to one child. I am sorry for the imbalance I created. Dad cleared his throat. I learned that silence is not neutrality. It is permission for harm. When they looked at me, waiting, I felt something loosen in my chest. I learned that boundaries do not break families. I said, sometimes they save them. Evan squeezed my hand under the table, and for once, the moment held steady instead of slipping away. After dinner, when the house had fallen into that soft, exhausted hush that follows a long day of truth-telling, I stepped outside with Evan. Snow drifted down in slow spirals, the streetlight catching each flake like a tiny lantern. He wrapped an arm around me. You did something impossible, he murmured. I did something necessary, I replied. The door creaked behind us. Dad stepped out, hands in his coat pockets. For a moment, he simply stood there beside me, watching the snow settle on the railing. Callie, he said quietly, I want you to know something. I used to think providing for a family meant protecting the oldest patterns we built. I see now that I see pieces now of how that hurt you, how it hurt all of us. I nodded, letting the words sink in. They were not perfect. They were not polished, but they were honest. He continued, you stood up to us, and I am grateful. Not proud, grateful, because we are better for it. Mom stepped out next, pulling her scarf tighter. Her eyes were soft in a way I rarely saw growing up. I hope you felt loved today, she whispered. I did. I told her, in a new way. She touched my cheek gently. Then we will keep learning that new way. When they returned inside, Evan turned toward me. What about you, he asked. What did you learn tonight? I exhaled. A slow breath that felt like it had taken years to reach the surface. That peace is something you build, I said. And family is something you teach. Evan smiled, brushing snow from my hair. Are you going to share this journey with others? Yes, I said. If someone out there feels invisible the way I once did, maybe this story will help them find their voice too. If any part of my journey resonates with you, I hope you stay connected, share your own experiences, and join us in the conversations that help all of us heal a little more. Thank you for being here and for listening to a story that taught me how to stand in my own light.